Slash and burn. Tulsi Gabbard has a big plan to make big cuts to the intelligence community's workforce. Plus, waiting on Moscow. After the president's diplomatic push produced optimism, Russia is throwing cold water on peace plans. And the party is over. Elon Musk says never mind to starting his own political party. Why he's turned his attention to J.D. Vance. Those stories and more today, Thursday, August 21st. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. The U.S. intelligence community is about to get a lot smaller. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is promising to slash her department by as much as 40%. Now, the director told her staff yesterday in a mid-afternoon memo. Gabbard said that the agency is at a crossroads and that tightening their belts will both eliminate organizational bloat and better safeguard the country from the weaponization of intelligence. The axe will fall on several offices that she believes, quote, politicized the flow of critical information, which does seem to be on trend for her. Yesterday, I told you about how Gabbard stripped dozens of security clearances for a similar reason. In this latest move, at least 3 offices are slated to be labeled redundant: the Foreign Malign Influence Center, the National Counter-Proliferation and Biosecurity Center, and the Cyber Threat Intelligence Center. Administration officials had a lot to say, in particular about the FMIC. That's the first office I mentioned there. They blame that office for eroding civil liberties under Joe Biden and helping fuel the suppression of free speech on some big tech platforms. Now over to Russia. The world is watching President Vladimir Putin to see what moves the Kremlin from "we're open to meeting with Ukraine" to "we are meeting with Ukraine." Yesterday, our Caitlin Dornbos laid out the major hurdles that could keep that from happening. Compromise must be on any negotiating table, but what Russia is saying it needs to get to that table makes the whole thing sound almost impossible. Moscow has new demands, including veto power over security guarantees that the U.S. and Europe agreed to provide to Ukraine. Ukraine needs those guarantees to move forward with peace talks. It sounds really complicated, but it's really very simple and very frustrating. Ukraine wants X, Y, and Z. Russia says, sure, so long as we can veto X, Y, and Z if we want to. So really, we're right back to where we started from. Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says a leader-to-leader meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky would be a, quote, period in talks, whatever that means, but not actual peace talks. The stall tactics could render the strides made in Alaska and Washington last week, with the U.S. acting as intermediary, moot. In the meantime, Putin is content to keep killing Ukrainians on the battlefield after launching its largest strike in weeks on Ukraine mere hours after Putin wrapped up his phone call with President Trump. Russia may soon complete its conquest of Pokrovsk. That's a city inside of Donetsk that's been under a siege for a year. Remember, this is the specific area of Ukraine that Putin has been demanding that Russia take full control over from the beginning. Now let's talk political parties. They aren't nearly as fun as actual parties. A fact Elon Musk is apparently just learning. It was only a month ago that Musk promised to give the country an America Party to challenge the two-party system that's dominated American politics since, well, almost since American politics became a thing. But now Musk appears to be hitting rewind, telling associates that he's worried a new competing party would alienate the Republican base. Now, I've covered every twist and turn of the Trump-Musk bromance bust, so this about-face is unexpected. Turns out, this isn't about Donald Trump anymore. Sources told the Wall Street Journal it's about Vice President J.D. Vance. It seems Elon is just fine being a MAGA Musk if Vance becomes the MAGA heir. Sources said Musk will likely financially back the Veep come 2028. Now, in his tirade against the president, the richest man in the world had promised to target purple Senate and House seats, pouring his considerable wealth into funding campaigns in those districts, similar to the $300+ million that he spent to help elect Donald Trump in 2024, something that Musk takes credit for. Now, instead of an upstart effort to upend the Republican Party, all that money could very well stay within the Republican Party. And Vance already went on record earlier this month expressing his hope that Musk would, quote, come back into the fold by the time we hit the 2026 midterms November next year. As for the Tesla founder, he took to X, no surprise, to say, quote, nothing Wall Street Journal says should ever be thought of as true. Now to our big story, new data that could reshape how Democrats and Republicans think about the 2026 midterms. It's a simple fact. The 2024 election was a disaster for Democrats. They lost the White House and both chambers of Congress. Whether you loved or hated that result, it is what it is. And these losses effectively shoved the Dems into a place politicos call the wilderness. Now, new numbers suggest just how big of a challenge they will face to find a path out of the woods. And these figures will likely make Republicans a little more confident that they can do what seemed unlikely just months ago. Hold on to their slim, I am talking razor-thin majority in Congress. Now, this new info comes from L2, a nonpartisan data firm. They found that between 2020 and 2024, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in all 30 states that track partisan voter registration, 30 out of 30. Republicans shifted the nationwide balance of power by 4.5 million voters, and it's a trend that seems to be a downturn for Dems and an uptick for the GOP. In places that have partisan registration, Democrats held an 11-point edge over Republicans Election Day 2020. On Election Day 2024, that advantage whittled down to 6 points. Now, we'll see if that gap continues to close after the midterms next year, or if the left somehow gains back ground. But complicating matters, this all comes as Texas is one step closer to redrawing its congressional map, which is expected to pass soon. It's the first shot in a redistricting war that could tilt the country in a decidedly more partisan direction. Joining me now, New York Post Washington Bureau Chief Josh Christensen. So Josh, what are the big takeaways here for Republicans, for Democrats? What does it look like moving forward?
Well, we're at a pretty big standoff here after 2 weeks of a lot of, anticipation about when the Democrats would actually return to Texas, when this special session would really get underway, the maps, all that sort of thing. And it was escalated by California Governor Gavin Newsom's threat to do his own redistricting. This is a process that normally happens once every decade in conjunction with the U.S. Census, but both this, Democratic-led state of California, Republican-led state of Texas have jumped the gun here in an effort to get an edge in the 26 midterms. Both of them are looking at potentially getting an extra 5 seats or so should their maps actually be approved and the races go in their favor. But
it's that point right there that I feel like not enough people are talking about. There is an assumption that if you get these extra seats, that the actual voters will vote the way you want. Is there a question that it might not go that way, or are these districts pretty solidly one way or the other, Republican or Democrat?
I mean, yeah, the word gerrymander is being thrown around all the time. So both parties in opposition in each state are pretty confident that the races are going to go towards the majority. Republicans will get the 5 seats they want in Texas. Democrats would easily get the 5 seats they want in California. But there's a lot of things that are, in any election that you can't really predict. So as far as the actual drawing of the boundary lines, it would be as favorable as possible for the party seeking those extra seats in many cases. But, these are also being challenged in the courts. So a lot of stuff is still subject to final, edits, tweaks before they actually see voters at the polls.
We, of course, can't predict what voters are going to do when they get in those voting booths, but we look at these numbers, we look at data that comes out to try to get an idea of maybe what would happen. And there was this nonpartisan firm who came out with a couple data sets recently that showed a really large gap between Republicans and Democrats, and that Democrats are losing ground in this wilderness here. I feel like that can be taken a number of ways. For the Republican side, do you see this big lead that they have, this growing lead that they have, and think, okay, let's double down and get every vote that we can and win by a huge margin? Or do you look at it and say, we kind of get this in the bag, and then you get complacent?
Yeah, I mean, you see different parts of the party favoring one or the other side of that equation. I think most people now are in favor, mainly because of how Trump has responded to this issue, that they just think, hey, we got the trifecta in Washington. We got, these state legislatures. We got these governor's offices. Let's try and ram through as much as we can. And the Democrats are responding in kind, particularly Newsom. But you've also seen, some members in New York, blue state, or Illinois, sort of suggesting that they need to, seize power where they can, seize an opening when they can, and use it to their advantage because, a lot of these struggles are, very small in the actual, procedure of it, but over time they build up to bigger and bigger wins for each party. And it gives something else for them to focus on besides the typical messaging issues, which Democrats haven't figured out the message that they want to carry into the 26 midterms. You thought it would be focused a lot on the Medicaid cuts after the big, beautiful bill passed. Now there's a lot of discussion about Trump, law enforcement crackdown, these sorts of things. And the Republicans are also sort of just kind of reworking and retooling some of their talking points based on how Trump is leading on each of the issues.
Yeah, the messaging is often very reactionary to what is happening in the White House. So they can't really, either side, kind of go forward all the time with what it is that they want to do because they need to deal with what is actually happening in front of them and what actual voters are paying attention to. It's so much, and the 2026 midterms are going to be here before we know it. Josh, I know you will be all over it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Last year, you might remember a wild story about a Kentucky judge who was murdered execution style in his own chambers. It was all over the news. Well, now there is a new, even more wild update. Multiple women say Judge Kevin Mullins, the man who was killed, ran a sextortion scheme, extorting women for sex. These women were reportedly coaxed into performing lewd favors, basically in exchange for get-out-of-jail-free cards or cash. In an interview with News Nation's Ashley Banfield, one of the alleged victims said that the judge and others would throw sex parties. Now, she called it consensual, but added, quote, "We were so young, and then they used it against us and to destroy our lives later." Now, the woman claims she went along with the scheme because she feared that Child Protective Services would somehow get involved and upend her life. And a second woman, a former jailer, claimed that the sex parties were an open secret. Pretty much everybody in the county knows, she said. Now, it's unclear if the supposed scheme had anything to do with the murder, which was caught on camera. Sean Steins, the sheriff's deputy accused of gunning down the judge in cold blood, was longtime friends with the victim. And finally, no hamburgers, no hot dogs for your Labor Day barbecue. That is if you're summering in Martha's Vineyard. The vineyard is going vegan and not by choice. This is almost hard to believe. A rare and life-threatening tick-borne illness is making people on the swanky New England island allergic to meat and dairy. The condition is called alpha-gal syndrome. You get it from Lone Star tick bites. Those are incidentally not from Texas. The name comes from a single star-shaped pattern on these little a-holes. You catch the syndrome from one of them, and the list of items it takes off the menu is supersized. Butter, cheese, beef, venison. I could go on, but it's depressing. There were 523 reported cases last year, and for those infected, the consequences of ingested anything with this alpha-gal molecule are really severe. There are milder ones like hives, stomach cramps, and vomiting, but terrifying ones like anaphylactic shock. One local eatery now offers an alpha-gal entree to cater to the growing number of vineyard goers with the syndrome. But it's not easy having food allergies. One 26-year-old teacher told the Post, quote, "You don't want to be the social pariah asking people, is this vegan? I can relate, my man. I am not vegan, but I am horribly allergic to gluten, and it is the worst. Triple checking menus, ingredient lists, the neighborhood barbecue, forget about it." Oh man, that's just depressing. And also now I'm oddly hungry. I need to distract myself, and you know what I'm going to do that with? The New York Post in print or online, so go check out what we have there. And don't you feel bad for me now? Do me a favor. Hit that like and subscribe button for the New York Postcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. If you have any good recipe ideas for us gluten-free people, hit me up on social media or drop them in the comments. As you know, I read them. See you tomorrow.